This is Tar Heel Talk, an in-depth look at the issues and people making news in North Carolina. Here's your host, Sonia Williams.
According to the National Fire Protection Association, home fires occur more in winter than in any other season. On today's show, we'll tell you how to be fire smart as you stay warm this winter. My guest today is Jan Parker, Injury Prevention Specialist with the Office of the State Fire Marshal. Jan, welcome back to Tar Heel Talk.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. It's that time of year again.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure having you on. And it seems like we do this show every year, but we do it every year because there are people dying every year from fire-related deaths.
Too many, and there are so many situations where these fatalities, these tragedies could be prevented with just a little bit of education and awareness.
Absolutely, and that's what we're going to hopefully do over the next half hour. Let's start, though, with heating, because I know that though it's starting to get cold, people are pulling out those space heaters or firing up their fireplaces. Talk a little bit about some of the things that they need to keep in mind before even using these devices.
Okay. Well, again, like you said, it has finally started to be much cooler at night, and we know that sometimes people do depend on space heaters, and unfortunately, in the majority of heating fires, the space heaters are involved. And one thing that everybody can do is, if they're using a space heater, electric space heater, especially, follow manufacturer's instructions. And if it's older, you need to really check it out and check out the cord. We believe that it's always best to plug directly into the wall outlet and not to use a lightweight extension cord, because the further distance, it's going to heat up. And they take, those electric space heaters take a lot of power. So plug it directly in and check for the cord to make sure that it's not frayed or worn, and keep it, where there's nothing sitting on it to wear or put, pressure on it. But again, look for the features like the safety tip-over switches. And the most important thing, too, is to remember the kid-free zone. 3 feet. And even if you don't have kids, pets, and that's 3 feet away from furniture, bedding, drapes, all of the things that can catch on fire. Anything that can burn needs to be a safe distance. And when you go to bed, you need to unplug these. A lot of people say, well, that's when I need it. But if you leave home or you go to bed for the night, you need to, shut these off, because they really need to be well attended. And you mentioned fireplaces. They're wonderful, especially during the holidays. A lot of people, that's the only time they use them. Be sure that you have the chimney checked out, that it's clean. There are professionals that do that, and that can guarantee you that there's not a buildup. And then you need to be sure that you use seasoned, which is dry wood. The green wood, doesn't put off as much heat, but it also creates the creosote, the buildup of the which is going to cause issues. And so burning the dry wood is much safer. And use a screen or the tempered glass, and that keeps you safe too, because the contact burns that are associated with people getting too close.
And people should have their chimneys cleaned every year?
Every year. And I know that seems excessive, but if you use your fireplace, that's sort of like the maintenance that's required to do it safely. And I want to remind people, even, on tight budgets, and I know sometimes we get stretched, but do not use your stove or oven to heat. They're not designed to do that. And unfortunately, some of the tragedies that have occurred are involved when people have gotten to, we're going to stay warm, whatever it takes. But there are safer ways to do it. And do not leave your burners on and use that as a source of heat.
Right, that's very important. What about, and I want to go back to the space heaters for a moment, because you mentioned the tilt over, the safety feature there. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that works.
Well, some of the newer in recent years, they have a lot of safety features, which is really good. And one of them is, in the event that it accidentally got knocked over, it would shut off immediately instead of continuing to heat up and being a fire hazard, like maybe the carpet or whatever it had fallen on. And that helps, that makes it safer. And then there also, like, be sure that you haven't overloaded. Like, you know, I had a one that I really thought that was new, and I actually had plugged it in, and all of a sudden I walked in the room and the lights were out. Well, that let me know that it was overloaded and that I had an issue and that I needed to have it checked out before I used it again, because that indicated to me that there was an issue. So again, they are going to take a lot of power, and that's why we say do not use the lightweight extension cords, which are for temporary use anyway. Plug it directly into the wall outlet.
Okay, and when you say overload, does that mean that
The
you had an
circuit.
issue with your circuit or the actual device? the
Actually,
heater?
you know, if you have the circuit or a fuse, some
Right.
older homes still use the fuses, but the circuit, you know, you go to the box and your breaker's clicked off.
Right,
So
right.
that's letting you know. It does that to protect you, because when it gets overloaded, heats up, it clicks off to prevent a fire, to keep you from having the overload. So
And when that happens, what do you do?
if you need to have an electrician come, because it
Okay.
indicates that there is something wrong, or use the appliance or unplug something. You know, like maybe you've got too many things.
In one area?
In one
plugged
area,
in. Okay,
yeah.
okay, that's
So
good
that's
to
sort of
know.
like a warning to let you know that maybe that you do have an issue. Because if your lights begin to dim or flicker on and off, or you're finding that your, you know, breakers shutting
Right.
off, that is letting you know that something's not right.
So you need to call an electrician
Exactly.
or make some adjustments in the house.
Exactly.
Excellent advice. How can people find out more information about fire safety?
Well, there's lots of great information out there. You can go to our North Carolina Department of Insurance, and you can go to ncdoi.com/OSFM or nfpa.org. They're both great sources, and we have links to lots of information, but there are lots of safety tips at the nfpa.org website. So whether you're talking about candle safety, cooking safety, heating safety, there's like about 50 different home safety tip sheets that you can just print right off.
And they are excellent. Lots of
They
good
really are.
information on there. We're going to take a break, Jan. We'll talk more in just a minute. We'll be back with more on fire safety after these messages. Today's show focuses on fire safety during the winter months and the holiday season. And with us again is Jan Parker, Injury Prevention Specialist with the Office of the State Fire Marshal. We are in the midst of the holiday season. People are getting their decorations up if they don't have them up already, but there are a lot of things that we need to keep in mind, especially when you're talking about those Christmas trees.
That's right. And it starts if you're going to have a fresh cut tree, it starts when you're selecting the tree. That's the first thing, is to be sure you pick a fresh tree so that it will be safe in your home.
So what are some of the things we need to look for?
Well, I brought a little sample here. You want to make sure that when you play with the needles that you don't have a handful, that you can bend these branches back and that they don't snap, that they're flexible. And this one appears to be fresh. And the most important thing right there at the light, a lot of times they will offer to cut the trunk for you, and about 2 inches. And when you get home, even if you're not ready to put it in the container and set it up, you can always place it in water and start keeping checking the water daily. I mean, don't miss a day. And the stand should be sturdy, and it needs to hold at least 1 quart of water.
Okay. So is it a good idea to have them cut that base for you on site?
It is. And if you purchase your tree somewhere that doesn't offer that, maybe you can have, if you have a little saw at home, or even, it doesn't have to be a chainsaw. You could do it with a small one if the base is not real large. But have, even maybe ask a neighbor if you don't have one. But it's just a good idea to get a fresh cut on there so that it can soak up that water. And it makes a huge difference in keeping the tree fresh.
Absolutely. And we have a video that kind of illustrates the difference between a moist tree and one that is a dry tree. So we'll take a look at that, and you can kind of talk us through what we're seeing.
Okay, well, it looks like they've ignited the dry tree here first, and it's immediate. It's like burns quickly, and that's why it is so dangerous to have a tree in your home and let it dry out. That's the importance of keeping it watered daily. And as you can see, the one that has been watered and is green, it's having a very hard time. Even though there's a heat source, there's a flame there, it doesn't ignite.
It is amazing how quickly that dry tree, I mean, in less than 30 seconds, it's fully engulfed.
Right, and that, the whole room would be engulfed, and that means that there's a lot of smoke and heat in that room, and it would be very difficult for someone to escape. Wow. And that's why, again, not to be a party pooper, but it's just so many simple things that you can do.
Right, and so you're saying to make sure that that container that's holding that live tree can hold at least a quart of water. It's something you need to check daily.
Check daily. And that's very important. Don't forget, and if you do forget, just the next day you want to, but that, by keeping a quart, keeping it full, then if you did accidentally miss a day, you could recover.
Right. And you also shared with us before that we should not keep our trees near heating sources.
Exactly.
Not any heating vents or obviously a fireplace.
Right. Try to select a place in the room that is away from a heat vent, but also away from exits. We want to keep that in mind too, that we do not want it to keep us from being able to get out. When you think about having a home escape plan and practicing, even during the holidays when there may be guests in your home, you need to be sure that everybody could, know what to do, know the sound of the smoke alarm. That's important. And to actually practice it. But when you're selecting the location, be sure it doesn't interfere with your escape.
And there are some things that we need to keep in mind if we use an artificial tree.
That's right. Well. Artificial trees, you want to make sure that, it's non-flammable, that the ornaments that you use are the type that are not flammable, and that you don't have any candles or heat source near the artificial tree as well.
Right. So. And those lights need to be, and I have to tell you, before we even talk about the lights, that I finally threw away that artificial tree that I had for about 15 years.
You thought it was time?
Yes, I think it was time
because
it definitely was a fire hazard at that point. After 15 years, it was time to let it go. But that's something you need to inspect every year as well.
And I brought some just to show you. This is an older set, and you want to examine the plug. You want to look at the wires carefully, and at the end of after Christmas, and we're in a hurry to get our house back in order, you pile these things up, and you want to stretch them out and take time to go over each section and check each little light fixture and make sure everything looks good and there's nothing loose. Like here I have a wire that doesn't look right, so that would be a concern to me. But check them out closely, and it is sometimes, it's just time to get new ones. And the newer ones, that's another thing, a safety tip, is the newer type, like example, the LED, they do not take nearly, they don't heat up as much. So that's going to help with preventing your tree from drying out.
Absolutely. So look whenever possible, look for the LED lights.
Yep. That don't have as much heat. The smaller bulbs are pretty good for that too, but again, some bulbs get really hot, and that would cause your tree to dry out, or the artificial ones as well to be, too close there.
Right, absolutely.
So,
well, when we talk about the holiday season, we always entertain and have those candles that smell so good out, but they can also be a safety hazard.
And I brought a few. Right here, I'll show you one that, it's lovely when it's lit, and a lot of times you see decorations and things around, but as you can see, any open flame that doesn't have a glass chimney to protect it, it could easily come in contact with something like the ribbons or other decorations that are on your table. So we remind people they need at least 1 foot away from any decorations or magazines, newspapers, or things that might clutter the coffee table. And this is what I think is a much better option. This one, again, is protected with the glass container, and it's less likely to be tipped over or have something that got in close contact to the flame.
Okay.
So, but even then, after several hours, the wax that's melted gets really, really hot. And when it gets low, we've even had people, tell us that it exploded. Well, it can get really hot and crack. So when it gets down, I know you want to get your money's worth and use all of it, but it's a good idea when it gets low, maybe just burn it for short periods of time, and then at some point you have to say, okay, it's time for a replacement.
Absolutely. Now, I've been to several holiday parties where the host will have those candles burning in the bathroom.
Oh, it scares me because I've been to a house fire that was exactly what you just described, where it ignited. It was sitting on the sink and it ignited the hand towels. Another concern is like in the windows, where there's blinds or curtains. Yes. And so please don't put candles in the windows. I know it looks really nice, but use the electric ones or flameless, maybe battery operated if you want that look. But again, bathrooms and bedrooms are really something to avoid because there's a lot going. When you're in the living room or kitchen, you're there and you can sort of keep an eye on it and watch. But when you put them in a room that you're not going to be in, it's easy to leave them unattended. And unfortunately, the majority of candle fires that I know about have been related to the bedroom or bathroom.
So definitely want to keep them out of those spaces.
So watch children and pets, and if you have house guests, if you're having a party, you need to, assign one of the adults, hey, you're in charge of keeping an eye on the candles because when you get busy, a lot of people, a lot of things moving around, and don't allow anybody to walk around the house, travel around the house carrying a candle. That's dangerous. So when you go to bed, leave home, somebody needs to be the one that's going to put out the candles. And we recommend the little candle snuffer instead of blowing, because if you blow it, it could actually,
Never thought about that. Okay, so candle snuffer is an important safety feature as well. We're going to take another break. We'll talk more in just a minute.
Okay.
Be back with more Tar Heel Talk after these messages. Welcome back to Tar Heel Talk. I'm Sonia Williams. Experts say home fires occur more in winter than any other season. Now, fire safety leaders are focused on keeping consumers safe during the winter months and throughout the holiday season. With us again is Jan Parker, Injury Prevention Specialist with the Office of the State Fire Marshal. Jan, it is the holiday season and people are having their parties and family gatherings and doing a lot of cooking. That's a place where we see a lot of fires as well.
Yep, in the kitchen, unattended cooking. #1 fire call that.
Wow.
And that's pretty much nationwide that we have more cooking fires, and it's because we lead busy lives, and especially during the holidays, we're trying to multitask. And if you're going to be cooking, you need to stay close by. And, stovetop, cooking, frying, that type of thing. And you can use a timer if you have to walk away,
yes,
but
that's important.
Take a spoon in your hand as a reminder. But for the most part, if you're going to cook, then that's what you need to do, not try to do 2 or 3 other things. But when you're entertaining, that can be a challenge. If you have house guests and maybe small children extra in the house, you need to have some activities and things to keep them busy so that it doesn't become a problem. But another thing people need to remember is that turkey fires. I know we're past Thanksgiving, but people like that.
For Christmas too, yes.
Absolutely. And they are very dangerous, and the National Fire Protection Association and the UNC Burn Center agree and really like us to tell people there's no safe way to tell the average consumer how to fry a turkey safely. And if you like fried turkey, you can order them at, let a professional do it, like at a restaurant or a grocery store sometimes. But there's alternatives like the oilless fryers that you can see now, or the infrared type cookers. So think about that if you're thinking, because that grease gets very, very hot, and it doesn't take a lot for something to go wrong, and it can just be a tragedy.
I was going to ask why fire experts think that or feel like the turkey fryers are so dangerous.
Well, most of the turkey fryers are the size of the fryer, and you put the oil in, and it continues to heat up, it gets very, very hot. And if the turkey's a little larger than it should be, if it's still partially frozen or it's wet and you drop it in, sometimes the oil splatters out and it can ignite quickly, and it can, again, people should never, ever do it inside or in the garage or any close, but really we just don't recommend that consumers try to do that themselves, because things can go wrong so quickly.
So leave that to the professional and just order.
Yeah, it could be, and even if just the grease itself, the oil could be, a really bad burn, even if it wasn't a flare-up or a flame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you talk about little ones and cooking and being in the kitchen, you want to keep them, you have some rules about the kids being in the kitchen as well.
Yep. The kid-free zone applies not only to that space heater like we discussed earlier, but also around the stove and the cooking area. Microwaves, a lot of people think that that's no big deal, but it really is, because we know foods can get very, very hot, and steam burns is one of the most common burn injuries that the burn center treats. So remember that, and hot chocolate, all the extra things, hot apple cider and things that we have extra that we don't normally serve might be, a challenge to keep that safe with kids around.
Absolutely. I want to go back to the Christmas tree that we talked about earlier, because you made an excellent point about the importance of purchasing a moist tree.
Yeah. Yes.
And you've got a demonstration.
I do. If you're going to have a fresh cut tree, again, the time to start your safety, your fire safety, is right there when you pick it.
We're going to look at a little bit of this video here to see the difference and how quickly.
Yeah. The tree that did not get watered, and it's going to ignite quickly, and that is a tragedy occurring right there, because hopefully the smoke alarms are giving a warning to the family to get out quickly, but again, this room is fully involved in just seconds.
Absolutely. But you have an in-studio demonstration that you want to show.
If you'll hold this for me, Sonia. I brought a lighter, and I want to remind parents and grandparents that keep these lighters in safe places. But this is a fresh green tree, and I checked when I purchased this tree. This was the trimmings on my tree. Actually, I did this. I bent it back, and it looked, I didn't see needles falling, so that indicated to me that it looked safe. So we're going to see, we're going to check it out here and see if this fresh tree would ignite. And it looks like it didn't really flare up. It looks like I got a little bit there on the tip. I'll try another one just to kind of show you that. And the point of this demonstration is that it didn't ignite easily.
Right,
If
like
we
saw
continued, we might be able to get it, but that's enough. I don't think inside we want to do that, but I do want to demonstrate that it does serve its purpose, and taking time to water it and keep it fresh and green would make it much safer in your home.
Absolutely, that makes a huge difference in how quickly it would burn.
Yes,
that would
because if this was dry, well, first of all, we would not be doing that in here, but we know that it would have been a totally different scenario. So,
final few tips: check those wires and lights before you start your decorating.
And please, please take time to get out the ladder. Do not stand on furniture and chairs and stools, because every year the ER sees lots of visits from people that are doing their decorating in high places. So be careful. Falls is the #1 injury during the holidays. Be sure you take time to test your smoke alarms. Make sure they're working. Make sure your house guests know the sound, and you talk about your home escape plan and where everybody would meet outside. Have a meeting place outside.
And people can get tips by going to the National Fire Protection Association's website and also to the North Carolina Department of Insurance website to get these safety tips. Jan, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for helping keep us safe this holiday and the winter time.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. That's it for this week's Tar Heel Talk. To comment on this or other episodes of the show, follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, or send an email to tarheeltalk@fox50.com. I'm Sonia Williams. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week.